The house is silent, but the echo remains. Not every inheritance is gold. Some are habits you can't see. The House of Secrets. Chapter 6, Inheritance Loop. The house was quieter now, but it wasn't peace. It was absence. Like the walls were still waiting for a sound to mirror. Peter stayed near the front entrance, as if ready to bolt. Isabel roamed room to room, touching old furniture, lost somewhere between nostalgia and suspicion. Josephine. She sat in the main hall, reading a book she hadn't picked from the shelves. It had been left out, waiting. I watched them all from the second-floor landing, and for the first time, I realized Gabriel hadn't built a trap to hold us. He had built a loop to guide us. Even in his absence, we moved like clock hands, predictable, inevitable. I came downstairs slowly. Each step creaked, a familiar rhythm. Peter looked up. "What now?" he asked. Simple question, complex answer. I said, "Now we find out what we inherited." Isabel spoke without turning around. "We already know. It's nothing." "He's dead. The system's dead. There's nothing left to fight." Josephine closed the book. She looked up, and for the first time, her voice wasn't mechanical. It was almost curious. "Are you sure?" She slid the book across the floor toward me. The cover was cracked leather. No title, no markings. I picked it up. Inside, on the first page, in Gabriel's handwriting, "The Inheritance Loop, a behavioral continuity study." And below it, status, active until emotionally disrupted. The house wasn't the loop. We were, and we were still running. I turned the page of the cracked leather book. It wasn't a journal. It wasn't even notes. It was a script, movements, conflicts, moments of doubt mapped with clinical precision. Peter leaned over my shoulder. "What is it?" I read aloud. "Phase 5, resource reallocation. Test subjects should converge at decision point within 24 hours of inheritance void. Primary expected behavior, contestation over remaining assets." I looked up. "It's not instructions. It's predictions." Isabel crossed her arms tightly. "What assets?" "There's nothing left." Josephine shook her head. "You're thinking materially." He didn't care about objects. He cared about behavior loops. Peter stepped back, realization dawning. He wanted to see if we would fight anyway, even when there's nothing to gain. The room felt colder, not from the air, from understanding, because we all knew. The arguments had already started in small ways. Accusations, doubts, glances too long, too sharp. Gabriel hadn't left them a fortune. He had left them a test, and they were already failing. Josephine stood, brushing dust from her dress. "We have 24 hours. If we don't break the loop by then..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. We could feel it humming underneath the walls. The old rhythms waiting to restart, and I realized the house wasn't holding us here. We were holding ourselves. The house didn't push us. It didn't have to. It just waited. By nightfall, small fractures had already formed. Peter had moved his things closer to the front door, pretending he might leave, but he hadn't. Isabel had claimed a guest room, locking the door like anyone cared to enter, but the lock was only for show. Josephine stayed in the library, silent, watching, not judging us, observing, as if she were already documenting how we would fail. I stayed in the main hall, reading the leather book over and over, trying to find some flaw, some exit clause, some way to disrupt the pattern. There wasn't one. Only predictions, only probabilities. And every time I looked at Peter, Isabel, even Josephine, I could feel the lines tightening between us. invisible, inescapable. At dinner, no one ate. The dining table stretched between us like a warning. Peter broke first. He shoved back his chair, stood too fast, too loud. "This is pointless," he snapped. "We should divide up what's left and get out." Isabel flinched. "There's nothing to divide," she snapped back. Peter gestured wildly. "Fine, then admit it. You're staying because you think there's something hidden. Something only you'll find if we all leave first." Isabel's eyes narrowed. The accusation landed too cleanly, too precisely, like it had been rehearsed. Josephine set her fork down carefully. She looked at Peter. "You weren't supposed to say that." Peter blinked, confused. "What?" Josephine smiled, not cruelly, but sadly. "You were supposed to think it, but not say it. Now it's real." And just like that, the loop tightened. Not by force, by choice, by us. I pushed back from the table. The words caught in my throat, because I knew what came next. It was in the book. It was always in the book. After conflict comes isolation. And somewhere deep in the mansion, a door creaked open by itself. The door stood open at the end of the east hallway. No one spoke about it. No one needed to. We all felt it, calling, pulling. Peter was the first to move. Of course he was. He'd always been the one who needed to know, not understand, not accept. "No." I stood. "Don't." He stopped halfway to the hall. "You don't even know what it is." "Neither do you," I said. Josephine remained seated at the dining table, her voice calm. "It's bait." Peter turned toward her, furious. "You don't know that." She tilted her head slightly. "Of course I do. Because you're not supposed to walk away from a loop until you believe you're making a choice. But there are no choices in here. Only steps on a map you can't see." Peter's hands clenched. "Then what? We just sit here? Wait for the walls to close in?" Isabel finally spoke. "Maybe if we stay, it burns itself out." Peter laughed bitterly. "Or maybe we rot here while she sits there quoting Gabriel like scripture." He pointed at Josephine. Her expression didn't change. Neither did mine. Because anger was phase 2 of the inheritance loop, and we were right on time. Peter moved again, this time faster. He disappeared into the hallway before I could stop him. I stood frozen. Josephine looked at me. "You can't chase him. That's part of it too. Separation, isolation, panic. Let him choose wrong." I hated how calm she sounded. I hated how much sense she made. The door swallowed Peter. The hallway swallowed the door. And the loop tightened. Again, the house swallowed Peter without ceremony. No crash, no scream, just absence. I stood there too long, staring at the darkened hall, waiting for something, a sound, a call, anything. Nothing came. Josephine spoke behind me. "The doors aren't exits. They're tests." I turned. "You knew?" She nodded once. "Gabriel designed them for behavioral feedback. Choice under pressure, flight under uncertainty. He wanted to see how quickly we would betray each other." Isabel looked sick. "We didn't betray him." Josephine's voice was colder now. "You betrayed yourselves." A shudder ran through the floor, faint, subtle, but I felt it. Not an earthquake, not machinery. It was the house adjusting, rebalancing, like a system realigning after a variable changed. I stepped toward the hallway. Josephine caught my arm. "If you go after him, you complete the loop. You turn separation into confirmation. You turn fear into loyalty. You make it real." I pulled away. "Then what? Leave him?" Josephine shrugged. Not in cruelty, but in acceptance. He chose. Gabriel always said, "Loyalty isn't obedience. It's staying still when leaving would feel better." I hated her for being right, but I hated Gabriel more for teaching her to think that way. In the darkness down the hall, a sound finally echoed back. Not a cry for help, not footsteps returning, just laughter. Peter's laughter, broken, uneven, tearing at the edges, and I realized he hadn't found an exit. He had found himself, as Gabriel had seen him, and the system was feeding him that reflection until he shattered. The loop didn't kill you. It made you finish yourself. Josephine and I stood facing each other at the edge of the dark hallway. Peter's laughter still echoed faintly behind us. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. Because in the space between us, something heavier than fear was settling. Choice. The real choice. Maybe the only one left. Josephine broke the silence first. You want to save him. It wasn't a question. You want to break the loop. I nodded. Of course I did. She studied me, and for a moment, I thought I saw something behind her calm expression. Not coldness, not control. Something almost like sadness. She said, "You can't save him by leaving. You can't save him by staying. You can only save him by interrupting yourself." I didn't understand. She seemed to see that. She stepped closer. The loop isn't about location. It's about action. As long as you follow the emotion Gabriel predicted, you complete the system. I said nothing. I could barely breathe. Josephine reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a key, but not the old brass one we used before. This one was darker, older, rougher, iron, not brass, worn by time. She placed it in my hand. "This unlocks the last room," she said. "Not the one you think. The one that was built only if someone disobeyed." I stared at her. "Why me?" Josephine smiled faintly, almost sadly. "Because you're the only one who hesitated." Gabriel didn't trust hesitation, but I do. She turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, key in hand, decision heavy on my shoulders. Behind me, Peter's laughter broke again, sharp, almost gleeful. Ahead of me, Josephine's footsteps faded into the empty house. And under my palm, the iron key grew warm, as if it already knew which choice I would make. The hallway to the last room wasn't marked. There was no sign, no lights, no path carved by years of footsteps, only stillness, and the soft weight of the iron key burning against my palm. I moved through the mansion like someone trying to step between raindrops, careful, slow, almost reverent. At the farthest end of the west wing, tucked behind a sagging bookcase, I found it. A door smaller than the others, iron hinges, iron frame, no handle, only a lock, tarnished and waiting. I slid the key in. It turned easily, as if it had been waiting longer than I had been alive. The door swung inward without a sound. Inside was a room no larger than a prison cell. Stone walls, no windows, no lights, only a table, and on it, a mirror. I stepped closer. No frame, no decorations, just a plain, vertical sheet of glass. Old, flawed. In the mirror, I saw myself, tired, frayed. But that wasn't the trap. The trap was that the reflection moved a little slower than me, half a heartbeat behind, a hesitation, a glitch. I reached out a hand. The reflection didn't move at all. It stayed staring at me, waiting. Behind me, the door clicked shut, and in the silence I understood. This wasn't a loop anymore. It was a choice, not between doors, not between escape routes, between what Gabriel thought I was and who I might still become. I stood there, staring at the mirror. It stared back, not matching me, not mimicking me, waiting. I reached out again, slow, controlled. The mirror didn't move. It wasn't a reflection. It was a recording. of what Gabriel thought I would do, what I was supposed to do. I dropped my hand. The mirror still held it out, frozen in place. A small plaque caught my eye, embedded into the base of the mirror stand. Dusty, almost invisible. I wiped it clean with my sleeve. 3 words engraved in old brass: inherit or interrupt. That was the real inheritance, not the house, not the system, not even the memories, the behavior, the path. I could step forward, touch the glass, confirm it, seal myself into the echo Gabriel built. Or I could do what the system couldn't predict. I could stop, walk away, choose not to engage, choose not to finish the loop. The door behind me was still closed, but the key was still in my pocket. I turned away from the mirror. My reflection, or rather, Gabriel's ghost of me, remained behind the glass, still reaching, still unfinished. I pulled the key from my pocket, walked back to the door, slid it into the lock, turned. The mirror didn't shatter. The room didn't explode. The house didn't crumble. The loop just ended, because it couldn't exist without my agreement. As I stepped out into the hallway, I realized Gabriel hadn't needed to force us into anything. He just needed us to believe we had no choice. And now, finally, I had one. I walked back through the empty hallways. The house felt different now. Not angry, not broken, just waiting. Dust hung heavier in the air. The lights were dimmer but not flickering. No hum under the floors. No ghosted footsteps behind me. The system wasn't dead. It had simply gone quiet, like a machine that doesn't know what to do without commands. I found Josephine first. She was sitting on the main staircase, elbows on her knees, head bowed. For a second, she looked so small, so human. She looked up as I approached, met my eyes, and for the first time, truly the first time, she didn't know what I was about to do. She smiled. Not the tight practice curve she used with the others. A real smile, small, tired, honest. "You chose," she said. I nodded, sat down on the step below hers. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The house creaked around us. Just an old building now. Nothing more. Isabel emerged from the parlor, blinking like she had just woken up. Peter wasn't with her. He wouldn't be coming back. Not the same way. Maybe not at all. Josephine stood, brushed dust from her sleeves. It's over. Not clean, not perfect, but over. I watched her descend the stairs, not marching, not leading, just walking. A girl again. Not a loop, not a legacy, just Josephine. Outside, the afternoon sun was still burning faintly through the heavy clouds. It was going to rain. Maybe it already had. And for the first time since Gabriel's death, I realized the house wasn't holding us anymore. We were free. But freedom, like all things inherited too late, came with a question. What would we build now that we had stopped repeating? And none of us had an answer yet. The rain started as we were packing. Software, persistent. A steady rhythm on the broken windows and sagging roof. It didn't feel ominous. It felt like a washing away. A beginning Gabriel never wanted to write. Josephine packed lightly. One satchel. No keepsakes. She didn't need them. What she carried wasn't tangible. It lived behind her eyes now. Isabel moved slower, dragging fingers along the furniture, the wallpaper, the picture frames still nailed to crumbling walls. I didn't rush her. Some ghosts deserved a longer goodbye. I wandered the house one last time. No path, no purpose, just instinct. And in the library, on the third shelf up, wedged behind volumes of dusty Greek philosophy, I found it. A slim leather folder, old, untitled, tied shut with a brittle red string. I opened it. Inside, one sheet of parchment, a letter. Gabriel's handwriting, tight and sharp, no greeting, no name. Just this: systems outlive their architects. But architecture persists inside behavior. If you have found this, you have interrupted a design. Good. Now you must build one better. Nothing more, nothing less. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it into my jacket pocket. It was not meant for fame, not meant for power, not even meant for forgiveness. It was a reminder that systems aren't walls, they're habits, choices, daily steps, repeated until they become invisible. Gabriel hadn't left behind chains. He had left behind a blueprint, broken, unfinished, waiting for something new. When I stepped out into the gray rain, Josephine and Isabel were already waiting. No one spoke. We didn't need to. We simply walked forward. No plan, no prophecy, no loop. Just one uncertain step after another. Choosing to build something Gabriel would never have recognized. The loop is broken, the echoes remain, but this time, we choose what comes next.